leaving your teammates high and dry. Like you said, you don't do it alone. But there's some guys who poured a lot into that team and him. And I'm sure he poured a lot back to those guys just to be left like that. I think that's the thing that people don't realize. Even though they're getting all this money, that is a disrespect to a friendship. Step into the Fieldhouse, your front row seat to legendary victories and untold stories. Hey, I'm your host, Lance Leonard, breaking down sports from the inside out, along with co-host Jimmy Lackey. It's more than just a game. It's the Fieldhouse Podcast. Hey, welcome in. It's the Fieldhouse Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. We are a production of the Kids Inc. Sports Network. We're co-hosts. I'm one of them, Lance Leonard. We have CEO and president of Kids Inc., Jimmy Lackey. Jimmy, you getting ready to attend a wheelchair basketball display in the next week or so?
I am. But first, he's the host of this deal. Let's just be real. And man, this is just something I've always wanted to do, and I asked him to come host this, and I just sit in. I'm just the hack on the side here. So
I had a conversation with somebody who's does something like this, and I think you're both hosts. You're not co-hosts, we're not.
Public can think what they want, but I know who the host of this deal is.
We'll have to ask Maddie what the official, if there is an official term.
She's laughing over there.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I think it's hosts, not. I used to always believe co-hosts. Not a big deal, but I'm just saying. I like hosts for each. Okay.
I'm just the guy over here. It's grateful that you're here to do this because it's fun.
We don't need to go on about that.
It's my 1 hour.
From now on, this little show, we're going hosts. Okay.
It's at least an hour, and poor Maddie, she has to sit through about 10 minutes of us just shooting the bull before it all starts about nothing.
Yeah.
Before we ever just say,
okay, let's go. We do go a long
go.
time on nothing. So.
Yeah, it's like Seinfeld. It's about nothing.
We do have a tradition now, though. This is number 44 for us. Hard to believe. We started it out with the late, great Randall legend, Leslie Broadhurst, and that just seems like yesterday that we interviewed him.
Maddie, do you remember the date we did the first one? Do you happen to remember the date?
I was just looking.
Okay.
Tuesday. This is the first episode of season 2.
Wow. So we're starting season 2.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
I love it.
So that lets you know that we didn't quite get 52 weeks in, but we take holiday break every now and then too. So, but 44 in a year, pretty good.
Pretty dang good. So
that's pretty good.
And we have a tradition now where we may have to go back on that. Once we get to 101, maybe we start back on numbers. But this is number 44, so we have a fun little game we play. Who's our favorite 44? It can be like a teammate we played way back in the day in high school or Little League. It can be one of our favorite all-time players. Obviously, Jimmy loves those Dallas Cowboys, so we've had a ton of those. I like the Denver Broncos. We've had way too many of those. I'm going to continue my tradition today. But let's do, when there's no guest here, I'm okay with this. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and we're going to play sixth graders and shout out our answer
I'm in for
to
being
the
a
teacher.
Sixth grader for a day. Count me in.
Okay. Yeah.
Count me in.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Number 44. 1, 2, 3.
Donnie
Floyd
Anderson.
Little. Donnie Anderson, of course, as well. Yeah. All right, Donnie Anderson, go.
I've told this story on the podcast before, but when I was a kid, my dad was a coach. Mom and Dad, I always watched the Packers. I was a big Bart Starr fan. I was a big Donnie Anderson fan. Donnie Anderson grew up 30 miles from where I'm from.
Stinnett.
In Stinnett. And,
they were
Stinnett Rattlers.
Rattlers at that time, yeah.
Back in the day, you drove by there and that Rattler was on the side of the field house.
Yeah.
And so I grew up a big fan of his. He played at Tech. And so when I was a kid, I wrote letters to Bart Starr and to Donnie Anderson.
At the Packers?
At the Packers.
Okay.
And Mom helped me put them together. I remember we put them in these little small manila envelopes, and I sent this letter off asking for an autographed picture back. Lo and behold, a few weeks later, I get 2 pictures in the mail. And I'm sure their agents just sent them, however that worked back in the day, but they were autographed, Bart Starr and Donnie Anderson, not to Jimmy or anything like that, but just, black and white, little action. To Dumas, Texas, to my 516 Pecan at that time. And I got these pictures. And so we get to high school, and the athletic director at the time, Mr. McDonald, Don McDonald, was Donnie Anderson's high school football coach in Stinnett.
Wow.
And so our senior year in high school, he invited him to come be the speaker at our all-sports banquet. I'm thinking, this is awesome.
Yeah, really.
So I took my picture again and had him sign it again so I could have an authentic signature right in front of me with that deal. And
did you ask him, hey, did you sign this one?
No, I didn't go there. But I said,
Yeah.
would you sign this again? I was just, trying to be quick. But I had
That's
a couple
cool.
of different times after that, had an opportunity to meet him twice with a friend of ours, Joe Ferran, down in Dallas. Joe has Matador Resources, oil company. And once in Dallas, I went to an event, and Joe had Donnie Anderson with him. And then Joe brought Donnie Anderson up here when they were having an event at the museum at the time with the sports memorabilia stuff. And he brought him up on his plane with him that day, and Donnie Anderson came to the museum with him. And so I've had an opportunity twice since then as an adult to, have some small conversations with him, nothing at length, and he wouldn't remember me if he walked in the room right now. But,
Yeah.
For me, as a kid, writing that letter and getting those pictures back to today, I still have a big affinity to Donnie Anderson, and
That is cool.
for number 44. And so it's a little personal with me.
Yeah, Donnie Anderson was one of the 100 greatest. We had this big thing at the Globe News.
Yeah, I went.
100 greatest. And we should have been more organized to keep it about a minute each. Instead, the thing almost lasted 4 hours. It was ridiculously long. Now, there were some great athletes.
But it was fun.
It was fun. And I had my moments of struggles. Donnie Anderson comes up afterward. He goes, and he called me by my first name. He doesn't know me, but he goes, Lance, that wasn't as easy as it looked. Congratulations on a great job
Yeah, he's
done.
a nice guy.
And I said, you serious? He goes, yeah, it was a little long, obviously, but it was. Thanks for doing all that homework. You know what I mean? That's the first time I'd ever really talked to him.
Brian Millard from Dumas, a year ahead of me in school, got honored that day.
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
a big deal. And Coach Barton and all that crew, their
Yeah.
family was there for him.
No, it was a great night. It was too long.
It-
Today's era, we could get it back down a lot quicker. But to have all of them in the same room was a lot of fun.
It was a big
Donnie
deal.
Anderson came up to me. Nobody else did because they knew, like, Lance, you may have struggled. My guy is Floyd Little. Okay, like if you're a Broncos fan from way back, you got to realize how bad they were in the 60s, Jimmy. They were the laughingstocks they burnt their vertical socks at midfield. They were so ugly, things like that. They were AFL, happened to make it into the NFL. But Floyd Little would rack up all these yards even though they would lose. And he wore the old school quarterback,
Face mask.
Yeah, face mask, even though he was a great running back. Bow-legged as all get out. So if you ever saw him just stand, his legs were like that. But just a humble guy. Everybody in Colorado loved him. When you're growing up, at that time, there was no Rockies. There was ABA basketball. You know what I mean? The Broncos were the only pro sport. And unlike Texas, like even the college football, CU got pretty good a little bit. Air Force, Wyoming, not on the map. But and so the Broncos were it, and number 44, and he finally got into the Hall of Fame. They used to joke at me up at the Globe News. You're just sitting around waiting for the paper to come out. By that I mean you would edit it, you would wait, and about 11 o'clock the press would start, and we'd grab the first few off the press to see how many mistakes we made. You'd edit them and then make the corrections for the home edition. But the one in Dumas had all the mistakes, okay? Anyway, so we would just sit around and talk. They'd say, who should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? So I'd always say Floyd Little. And lo and behold, a fan of his started the commitment to making the
Committee.
the legends or whatever, let them know, like, this is what he did.
Yeah.
And that writing campaign put Floyd back on the map and eventually got in. But true story, and this is way later, but not that long ago, he went in. And we're up there, and it was about time for the Hall of Fame names to come out. I said, it's time. Floyd Little. Everybody goes, oh, Lance, you always say that. You know what I mean? And we got a good laugh the next day. It was Floyd
That's
Little.
awesome.
But, yeah, he was so popular. But they were so bad, Jimmy.
That was back when they did a 14-game season. They had 4 preseason games and a 14-game season.
Yeah.
And I hated preseason. It lasted too long. It just lasted too long.
Yeah, so that's my 44. So
yeah, those are good ones.
Yeah. No,
I cut you off at the beginning about the wheelchair game, so I want you to follow up with that.
Yeah.
Because that's a neat event. People need to know about that. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's called One Chair at a Time. Joe Chris Rodriguez puts it on, and what they do is the athletes around who are handicapped, and a lot of them are tough stories. You know what I mean? Like maybe a car wreck when they were healthy till their 9th grade year or 8th grade year, and some were born this way. But what he does is these chairs that these athletes participate in cost about $4,000.
Yeah.
They're not just basic wheelchairs. Yeah. And then as the athletes grow, like everybody does in high school, they have to change the chairs out. So this helps that whole process. But the tournament we're talking about is a wheelchair basketball tournament that raises money for it. And the media's had a team for like 10 years. We are exactly 1-10-0. 1 win, 10 losses, and no ties. And that 1 win came last year. So Joe Chris always puts us up against Sonic, loves playing us. They're just as bad as we are and usually beat us. This year, I think it's Street Toyota has a team. Okay. They may be stacked. We may lose by 40 like sometimes we have. But your wife played last year, so we had to bring her back. She's basically one of the only media members with a non-losing record.
That's
okay.
Funny.
Yeah,
that's
true
funny.
Story.
Her and Carolina and Rhonda.
Yes,
they had a good time doing that last year.
And they're going to. Right now we have 4 females. What it is, 3 males, 2 females are always on the court. They've really changed that up. It used to be just go for it. You know what I mean? And hey, the APD, they can do more than arrest people.
Yeah.
They can play some serious wheelchair basketball. And I think they won like 7, 8 in a row, and he had to kind of ban him for a couple of years to let somebody else win. You know what I mean? But it's a great cause. It's out at Caprock High School, and they play throughout the week. They give a nice trophy away, Jimmy, to the serious leagues and all that, and it's just a lot of fun.
Let me tell you the best thing that came out of that for me last year.
Sure.
It had nothing to do with basketball.
Okay.
So Jeff Williams played with the group, from Emerald High.
Yes.
And Stacy and I, his wife, sat over in the corner, and we were visiting and got to talking. And I don't know how the subject of lawn maintenance came up, but we came up about something about having to deal with the yard. And she goes, our son Brett has his own landscaping company now. And I said, really? I said, well, I need somebody new to take care of my yard. I said, I've had some issues with it, and I need somebody good. And I'm telling you, Brett texted me while we were sitting there. Stacy must have sent him a text. Brett texted me while we're sitting there watching the game. I texted him back and said, I'll meet you at the house tomorrow. And since that day, he's taken care of my yard.
And
it looks 10 times better than it has.
That's great.
And they're Johnny on the spot. They take care of it. They're affordable. I've recommended several folks to them. But the best thing that came about from that wheelchair basketball game last year was Stacy telling me about Brett and him taking care of my yard. And golly, it looks so much better.
Not to bore everybody, but lawn, as you get older, it kind of becomes a legit deal. And my lawn's the worst on the block. So this year I went down to Panhandle Greenhouse, Those guys are legit. I'm in that program, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've been on it.
And I seeded myself. I can't afford sod, okay?
Yep.
Let's just get real. I seeded it. I've got the Energizer on or whatever they call it, so we'll see how I roll.
Yeah, just
you
keep
know
the
what
water
I mean?
to it.
Yeah.
I've been on that same plan, and they know what they're doing.
They do know what they're doing. Yeah, you know what I mean. And they kind of take pride in like, hey, good luck. Because I said, hey, I've got the
Craig's
worst.
the one that turned me on to it. He'd been with them for a long time. So.
I said, hey, I told him, Jimmy, I got the worst lawn in Amarillo. He goes, oh no, you don't. I showed him a picture. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm going to tell you who probably had the worst lawn in Amarillo, and that's Mr. Duggar. He never watered his yard. I mean, Mr. Duggar lived over there in Wolfland, and, there's all these beautiful homes, and there was his house and this just dead grass out in front. And I know his neighbor Ken hated it. He had 2 or 3 different neighbors to the north during that time, and bless their hearts, his yard was in the middle and it just yellow year round.
Well, I mean, I respect yards, but really realistically, I mean, we should all have rocks and dirt and sand, and and be deserty here. You know what I mean? Just have that.
I had
look.
an aunt come from Pennsylvania to stay with Kim and I years and years and years ago. And I think she got up at 4 in the morning. I don't know, but she went outside and she would walk to McDonald's from our house and come back. She'd go get a coffee and she'd walk back. And she was sitting out in the front yard the first day she's here, and those sprinklers came on. And in Pennsylvania, they didn't have sprinklers.
Yeah.
She didn't know what it was, and she came running in the house screaming.
That's hilarious.
And they'd never seen a sprinkler system before. So
Yeah.
you know.
Hey, I've got a few things for you today.
Go for it.
Obviously, the Masters is near and dear to both of our hearts. And Rory McIlroy wins that. Just a nightmare of a day for him, really. It wasn't a walk in the park by any means. Hit some of the greatest shots we may ever see at the Masters. Hit a couple of the worst shots you're ever going to see by especially a winner. But the emotions coming out of him were so real. It was a popular win. He clinched the Grand Slam. Only 6 golfers in the world have ever done that. So his name's on that list forever. Plus, somebody of his stature, I just know, they have a Tuesday dinner there where only the champions are allowed in there and the chairman and then who's ever waiting on you. But that's it.
Yeah.
There's no family. There's no wives. Nobody's even the door closes and that's it. You know what I mean? I know how bad he wanted to be in that room, and I wish somebody would have asked that question, but they didn't. What would you think? I mean, I had a good time watching it.
So we had our 5th and 6th grade track meet Saturday morning at 10, and then my grandson ran at 2. And as soon as that meet was over, I told Kim, I said, I'm done for the weekend. Other than church Sunday morning, I'm in front of the TV. So I shot home and watched Saturday. I'm thinking, okay, he's going to take a 4-shot lead.
Oh yeah.
Into Sunday. I'm thinking this is maybe 3, but he's going to take a 4-shot lead. And then Bryson DeChambeau hits that putt from cross 18 on Saturday and drains that putt. And I'm thinking, holy cow.
Yeah.
Look out, here we go. And then on hole 1. Doubles it. But I never moved the whole day. I mean, we got home from church, and the minute I sat down, they were introducing the 2 of them on the tee box. And I thought, man, this couldn't have been better timing. And my wife sat and watched the golf tournament all day long. And she's a golfer. But she never can sit still.
Oh, no, yeah, no.
Kim can't sit still. Yeah. She sat and watched the golf tournament all day long. It was grueling. It was grinding. I was rooting for Rory McIlroy. I have 3 buddies from high school, and we were in a group text. And, when he hit that shot on 13 in the water, the guys were going, how do you do that, choker? And I'm like, I'm just raising my hand. I could do it real fast. Just give me a club in that situation. Those guys, and he even said in his interviews post-match how nervous he was.
Yeah.
And if those guys are nervous, can you imagine somebody like me get up there 125 out, and I know all I got to do is hit the middle of the green. I just got to hit the middle of the green. I would have hit somebody.
Yeah.
And I would have been, if I was whatever he was under at that point in time, I'd have been 40 over by the time the round was over.
Yeah, fair enough.
I just, the grueling deal, and my son-in-law asked me, he said, why is the Masters so prestigious? And I said, Luke, here's the deal, in my opinion. U.S. Open, British Open, PGA, they play at all these other different places.
Yeah.
This place is pristine. And you only get to go there if you're really, 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 really good.
Oh yeah.
But it is the be all end all.
Only
golf.
by invite, yeah.
And it is a tradition like no other.
Yeah,
and it is what it is, and it's special. Jim Nantz, my gosh, can you imagine that ever being without Jim Nantz? He makes it so.
He got a little mushy, a little deep early.
Yeah, he did.
But no, he's the greatest.
He's just the very best. I mean, March Madness has continued, and I know the Masters will too someday without him, but he makes it special too, and you could tell he wanted Roy to win. I mean,
you could tell.
There was no doubt about it. And,
I guess he hosts like a dinner. I'm not sure what night, but to get invited to Jim Nance's dinner is pretty special. I know a couple of buddies of mine got invited once. I got to cover it 11 years, so I've walked that course, fair or not, over 70 days. You know what I mean? Which is insane to say. But and I never found a weed, by the way. I always did a column every week for the Globe News, searching for one weed, one dandelion. Never saw one.
Yep.
What they do there is insane. But if you ever get a chance, go. It's
the undulation of that course, people don't. TV doesn't do it justice.
No, especially number 9. It's literally like that. Okay, your drive goes down the hill and then you're looking up. Now, where they drive the ball is insane. I was in the media lottery and got to play it a couple of times as well. And the day after, and you are a member for a day, Jimmy. It's unbelievable. You drive down Magnolia Lane. I will say this, though. They wait for, like, the Corvettes or because, like, J.J. Watt played it in the morning, you know, guys like that.
Yeah.
And then they have the media, but they let 28 people get to play it, okay? And you get an invite on Friday with a card, you know. They hand you a card. You have invited to play the Augusta National. And then you drive down Magnolia Lane. You dress in the champion's locker, which even the most of Masters golfers, they're not allowed in there. You know what I mean? It's insane. Tiger Woods, Ben Hogan. I mean, you just look around, you're like, Jack Nicklaus, you know. I mean, you're just like, this is insane. You know what I mean? And it's smaller than you think. And then you go out, they give you a caddy. Now, when I pulled up, I had an old Scottish guy, but they saw my Subaru. When I came out, I had a guy who maybe had been there, you know, this is like his second year. So they know who to give the really good guys.
Yeah.
But but when you're there, I was probably 10 feet. They have these like 6 seats that a lot of the media members don't know about, right under the 18 tower where Jim Nance is up talking. You can't hear him or ever see him. They're hidden up there. They must have bathrooms up there. They never come out of there. But when Tiger won in 2019, I was about this far from the green to witness that. Yeah. So Masters is
I remember seeing you in a picture during his press conference.
Yeah.
You were up toward the front in a press conference once upon a time. I saw a big photo of the whole media room, and I could see you up there at the front.
Here's the deal. So I got there. You know, I was one of the ones invited. I don't know why, but I was thankful. They give you like a green tag, like you're allowed into the media room. I'm like, okay. And then I walk in, and no one wanted. There was like 2 seats left, and they were both up front.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The front row was open,
crazy.
so that's why I was there. But yeah, but it's near and dear to my heart. Always will be now. Got to write for the Augusta Chronicle as well as the Amarillo Globe News. Ryan Palmer, let's give him a shout out. You know, he was there a few times. I got to cover him every day. Here's me bugging him for an interview. How'd the round go? Things like that. Always gracious with his time. Yeah. Even after a couple of struggles. You know, the last thing they want to do is get up there and talk about their round after they struggled. You know what I mean? But it's been a chance of a lifetime. You know, and
what a round Rose shot though on Sunday, 7 under.
Well, what a classy interview afterward. Yeah. Who could do that?
Yeah.
But but it's special. Question: best month of sports is April it with the Final Four, and then the next week the Masters.
Probably hands down for me it is. March Madness, and you know how much I love football. But March Madness is my favorite sporting event of the year.
Yeah,
you get all those teams in there, and you just never know. You know? I mean, this year all the number ones end up in there, but and even on the women's side, all but one was the number one, and guess who won it? The number 2.
Yes.
You know, the UConn women, they were on a mission.
Yeah.
That March Madness, and I like both the women's tournament and the men's tournament. I can't get enough of either one of them. I'm not the biggest of basketball fans by nature, but WT games I'm not going to miss if I don't have to. And that consolidated time of a 64-team play-in included deal rolling right into the Masters is pretty special time.
Yeah, no, I agree.
For sports.
You got Daytona fans and Super Bowl and Feb. Everybody has their moment. Anytime the NFL's playing, it's a great month. College football as well, January. So I don't know. Hey, speaking of, I had a couple things for you today. Did we talk about Jill Rankin Schneider retiring?
You and I did off air last week, but I don't think we've talked about it on the podcast.
Let's talk about it on air.
Yeah.
Her legacy is going to be definitely one of the great athletic resumes and great persons, if you ever met her.
She's great.
That's off the chart. That's a no-brainer that she's great. But maybe one of the great resumes of all time for a Phillips Blackhawk, native and coached at Borger, was on the 1980 USA Olympic team, played for Pat Summitt, played at Wayland Baptist, was on Jody Conrad's, one of her national championship teams. And then she ends her illustrious coaching career by winning the Class 5A Division II state championship last month.
Yeah. Jill, when we used to run the tournaments for Canyon ISD, as you know, and when they would come to play in that tournament, there was never a more classy person than Jill. I've known her a long time. She was from Phillips. Her and her sister both were outstanding basketball players.
Yes.
And I've known Jill since I was young and knew of her, and then got to know her as we got older. And she's just pure class.
Pure class.
She is pure class. On top of the fact that she's a really good basketball coach.
Oh, yeah.
But, she's her demeanor reminded me a lot of Lombard, just pretty calm, cool, and collected most of the time. And but beyond her coaching, the experiences that she's had.
I know, my gosh.
Think about this. She's on the Olympic team, and we boycott that year. They don't get to go. And
1980, Carter.
Yeah. Russia, we boycott the Olympics. And think of all those athletes, but we knew one of them.
Yeah.
We knew Jill, and God, what a downer to not get a chance to compete in the Olympics. And she's got a storied career, both as a player, as a coach, but even better as a person. She's one of a few, and she's top notch in my book. And I hope I get to see her here for too long and get a chance to congratulate her. I haven't seen her in a little while, and
had a 5 overtime game down in Littlefield with Emerald High. One of the great games I've ever watched in my entire life.
And here's the other thing about her. These last 2 years, think about being the head coach for a kid like Aaliyah Chavez.
Yeah, I agree.
And how you handle that from a coaching standpoint. All of that attention and all of that media coverage and all of that pressure that goes with it. And you've got how many other kids on the team you got to take care of too. You don't just have one. They don't win a state championship with just one kid. And,
no.
And she's got to, orchestrate all of that in a
pretty
pretty tight bubble.
Yeah.
And so
she handled it masterfully.
She's as good as anybody on it.
Yeah. Well,
no doubt about it.
Great career and amazing person. If she's ever in Emerald, we'd love to have her.
Oh yeah,
on.
we just need to call her and see if she'd come in and be on with us sometime. I guarantee you she'd do it.
All right. On the flip side, we have this NIL, and look, I'm all for the players getting the money, but why are we surprised? I mean, this week, Tennessee quarterback Nico, and I'm going to butcher his name, but we'll just call him Nico, making about $2 million a year, a great quarterback, had a great year, goes in and says, "I want more." You know what I mean? And basically, they said, "Nah."
Yeah, good for Tennessee.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you.
I am all behind.
Why are we surprised, though, that somebody tried this?
Well, I'm not.
Okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
But it goes back, we talked a little bit about it last time. I'm old school, and I agree with you. If this is where it's going, these kids, coaches can go too. Coaches can move too. And so the loyalty factor works both ways. That knife cuts in both directions. But when is enough? And again, I go back to what we were just talking about with Jill. There's other players on that team. He can't be a superstar by himself. And so for them to come in and just say, we're not going to go there, I applaud Tennessee for that. I really, really do.
It will never stop because just for this fact, especially when you see him land somewhere. If he landed alone, no team, this would nip it. Okay, guys wouldn't be allowed to do it. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen. I will say this, and I know it's kind of corny and old school, but leaving your teammates high and dry, like you said, you don't do it alone.
Yep.
But there's some guys who poured a lot into that team, and him, and I'm sure he poured a lot back to those guys just to be left like that. I think that's the thing that people don't realize. Even though they're getting all this money, that is a disrespect to a friendship. And I think that's down deep. That's where he's going to be hurt the most.
Here's another perspective that I look at it from too, though. He fit well there.
Yeah.
He may not fit well somewhere else.
Yeah.
He may not blend in as well. He may not produce like he did there because the fit was so good.
Yeah. No, I agree. Josh Heupel, the coach, we know him from his OU days and all these things, but a great guy. So I will say this: we're going to see more of it. Let's not. Oh my gosh, he's the worst human being on planet Earth. No,
he's the first.
Yeah, he's the first. It's just like the Villanova quarterback getting the rule change for JUCO. Everybody's pointing to him like, oh, no, he's just trying to get a few more years of his college career and maybe advance into the NFL. I get what they're doing. I don't personally hold a grudge against anybody doing this. Yeah. It's part of it. I will say there is a solution. Once you want to stop it, then don't let him land. Don't let him land for $8 million or whatever he wants. So, but if you can play, you can play. And I see where already Texas Tech is rumored to be one of the teams bidding for his services, which well, I think Joey McGuire can do better than that for us.
I don't know this for fact, so don't hold me to this, but I do know this part. So my youngest daughter and her fiance went to Oklahoma State this past weekend. Massive concert over the weekend.
Okay.
And get a picture.
Country?
Oh, yeah, big time. And multiple artists throughout the weekend.
Garth Brooks?
No.
He's kind of dumb.
They got
Go ahead.
I'm trying to think who got back together after several years.
Brooks and Dunn?
Oh.
Okay.
Cross Canadian Ragweed.
Oh, yeah.
They got back together.
They got a Pampa guy, right?
Yeah, they got back together and played. But my understanding was, anyway, Hallie and them sent some pictures back, and they sent a picture back. They were at a tailgate, and Gundy comes by their tailgate. And they, of course, they're all talking to him. He just wanted a hot dog. So he got a hot dog. But my understanding was, Colton was telling me last night, I said, who put this concert on? Because I saw lots of friends of mine that were at it all weekend long. Apparently, it was raising money for NIL money at Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
And apparently, they raised a whole bunch of it,
Yeah.
And so
Smart.
they said there was over 180,000 tickets sold.
Wow.
For this event.
And it goes to the NIL.
And that's what I was told. Now, whether I'm accurate on that, don't hold me to it because I don't know that for fact. But that's what Colton was kind of telling me last night. I was like, wow. But I knew it was massive in terms of the attendance and the number of tickets sold. So it's real.
Yeah, no, it's real. Tech's fortunate right now with Cody Campbell's generosity, Double Eagle, and John's down there. Yeah. So
and they're getting others to buy in, and so kudos to them. And
it's changed. I think what Coach Barnett said on my radio show once, Gary Barnett, former CU and Northwestern coach, where eventually we're going to have 40 super teams, in college football. Mm-hmm. They will have nothing to do with the NCAA. They will be their own entity. They'll be like a NFL. And those 40 teams will play like a pro league, and then the rest of college football will go back to being a lot like it used to be.
Yeah.
And he said that's going to happen sooner, and I agree with him.
Okay, answer me this question because I haven't kept up with the news in the last week. I haven't really been paying much attention to anything. Brendan Housen moving again?
Yep.
I heard that.
Yeah, he left Kansas State for Iowa.
I had not heard where.
Yeah, Emerald High's Brendan Housen. He started out at Villanova for 2 years, played last year. So he's been to the Big East for 2 years, and he played last year in the Big 12 with K-State. And he has transferred to Iowa, and he'll play in the Big 10 his last eligibility year.
Brendan's an example, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Lance. heavily recruited out of high school, commits to Villanova, and lo and behold, gets there and his coach leaves.
Oh, yeah.
It's a perfect
Yeah.
example of how that works both ways.
Yeah, and that crushed him. He won.
Yeah, big time. He went there because of that coach. And
Jay Wright.
great guy, good
Yeah.
coach,
Yeah.
really good commentator too. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I like him in that role a lot. But that's just one example of, kid puts all of his ducks in the pile there and get there, and lo and behold, coach leaves.
I was surprised a little bit just for the, and I text with him once in a great while, nothing often, just so it's not like he's going to trust in me to, break any news or anything like that. But I'll just say I like him. I really like him as a person.
Good kid,
great kid,
good family.
Yeah,
good family.
His parents are amazing.
Represents us well.
Yeah.
Just
he got good playing time. As I understand it, in the $700,000 range was his NIL, which is excellent money. So I was surprised he left.
Yeah, I just heard that, and again, example both ways. Coach leaves. Just going different direction.
And who knows? What goes on in the locker room, behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But he's at Iowa.
Wow.
He's at Iowa. They need an outside shooter. They have great inside play right now. He may go crazy there.
I'd heard that, so that confirms that for me.
I wanted your opinion on two other things, and we'll hop out of here. Okay. Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter, my CU guys, number 12 and number 2, their jerseys will be retired.
Saw that today
at the spring game, here in a couple of days. Actually, you know what I mean? Like April 16th. First of all, retiring a Heisman number, I get it. Number 12, I'm all good with being retired.
That's exactly where I was fixing to go.
You know what I mean? But Shadur, come on.
2 years.
Yeah.
4-year deal, I can get it. 2 years, I'm not sure. Heisman deal, I got no issue with it.
Yeah, me neither.
I got no issue with the Heisman deal.
Yeah.
How many schools get a chance to get a Heisman winner?
Yeah.
100% behind that. A 2-year, I don't know. But in this day and time, Lance, sometimes you get to keep a kid 2 years.
2 years, maybe.
I might want to retract that statement a little bit because, man, you got to keep a kid for 2 years.
Yeah, we just talked about it.
Thank goodness Dad was there because might not have happened otherwise. But, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I ought to back off that a little bit because in this day and time, keeping somebody for 2 years is a pretty
might
good
be
gig.
a big deal. Yeah. No.
I might retract that a little bit.
I think retiring numbers should be just like such a rare thing.
Yeah, you got to be special.
When you walk into that place and you see the numbers up there, you want to go, oh yeah. Even Tech, all the years, I think they have 8 guys now on the stadium. Just 8.
Yeah.
So I was disappointed in this. My last one for you, the NBA playoffs are starting. I'm not a big NBA guy. I do like playoff basketball, like I like playoff NHL hockey. So I will tune in a lot more than I do during the season. And a lot of people love the NBA, and I get it. But have you ever seen a franchise? Do we have anything to compare it to with the Mavericks trading Luka? But the impact, like, their own fans now hate their own team, literally because of what happened. And until they change management, I think that's going to continue. I have never seen, I get it for a few days, a week or something, and then you have Luka returning and he's crying when they're showing the video. He wanted to still be there, and the fans just lighting up Mavs management. And to this day, they're going to hate being a Mav fan. They love Luka. They love being Mav fans. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen a franchise lose their fans quite like this?
No, and I don't know enough about it, but take a guess for me here. Cuban's role's different now.
Oh yeah, Cuban's out of it.
Does that happen if he's there?
The trade doesn't happen if he's in charge of that part of the Mavs, which he was forever.
Total role reversal, backfire of when Jimmy Johnson traded Herschel Walker. Think of it that way. That was a great trade for Dallas. Early on, a lot of people were going, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah.
And that one turned out to be gold. This is the total opposite. And even back then, you got to take into account now. You got social media, and you've got all this way of people to voice their opinions that you didn't have back in the day with the Herschel Walker trade. And that one turned out okay, but this one, total disaster.
No, I'm with you.
And
Yeah.
How would you like to be the marketing director and they walk in and say, "Hey, we're going to trade Luka, but it's going to be okay." Really?
Yeah, that's the same thing. Kind of we talked about a little bit, and they tried to twist it, and he's okay with talking about it, but the 806 logo that was so controversial. Sure. You have to run that by some people and just get a vibe. Mm-hmm. Both those would have got a vibe like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? But
this is on a
I've never seen anything like this
on a grand scale, and it's
it may suffer this franchise for a decade.
It's a wet rat for sure.
Yeah. You got anything today?
No, this is this is one of those days where I got to work and I looked at my calendar and I had one appointment. When I got here, I had one appointment, podcast today, 2:00. We're going to tape a podcast. That's always part of my favorite part of the day when we get to do this, because it's a time when I don't have to come in here and think.
Yeah.
We just off the cuff. There's nothing scripted. I write some notes down as we go, but I don't come in here with a agenda or anything like that. I've had a couple other meetings today that were in-house meetings, and today's been a good day just to get caught up. We have to do tax reports every quarter, and I got 3 of those done today. But it's just been a good day. We don't talk much Kids Inc. in here any as much as we do other things, and we still have a business to run here, and our staff's doing a great job. I will bring this up just real briefly before we get out of here. I don't want to go back and talk about the bad stuff that we've had to deal with here lately and getting all the security in place and all those things. But I will tell you this, and I've told our board this, and our staff knows this. I was concerned. We have to raise fees. I was concerned. We hadn't raised fees in 6 years.
Yeah.
We made it through COVID.
I'm glad you're talking about this. Yes.
We made it through COVID without having to raise fees. We started registration for these 5 sports that are coming up in May that'll have the first batch of fee increases. And we started registration for them last year on April 1st. In 2024, they started on April 1st. Well, it just so happens that registration for them this year started again on April 1st. And so I've been tracking it because I was concerned about numbers.
Yeah, you're a numbers guy.
And so through the 13th, today's the 15th. So through the 13th, I haven't looked at last night's numbers. We're up 35.8% in registrations with our fee increases in place. And the feedback I'm getting, it's not tons and tons of people coming and saying anything to me, but I do bump into folks. And the security issue has been met with a rousing thank you.
Yeah.
And that's a good move in this day and time. And it's unfortunate that we've had to address that. It's unfortunate we had to go that way. But I will tell you from two different directions, from coaches and parents and officials, I've had great reviews from that standpoint saying thank you for helping us with that. I've got a letter going out to our officials today to let them know, at this point in time, you're going to be able to focus on working with our coaches and keeping the game safe and play moving for the kids. That's going to be their sole focus. We'll have somebody there to deal with the rowdy folks, and they're not going to have to mess with that anymore.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Coach gets out of hand, security officer can handle the coach too.
Much needed.
And so from that standpoint, it's been really nice. But the one thing I've been most grateful for is the law enforcement agencies here locally and the support they've given us.
Really?
Little things. And I'll give you an example. When you go out and you hire these folks, they've got a minimum number of hours tied to that contract because it needs to be worth their while to go do it.
Yeah, fair enough, too.
Yeah. So, if you and I were having an event and we needed to hire security, well, it's a minimum 4 hours. Well, we play 6,600 games a year, and some of them just last an hour and a half, 2 hours, or we may just have like a T-ball game, and we may have 2 games going on each end of the football field there, but it may only last hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half max. And so when we sat down to work with the group that does the clearinghouse for them, it's a company called Roll Call, and they're based out of Dallas, and all the law enforcement agencies work with them. So we had a Zoom meeting Friday with all those folks, and man, they couldn't have been nicer. and they're making it so easy for us. But the law enforcement agent said, Jimmy, we're not going to charge you more than 2 hours.
Wow.
If you've got a 2-hour event, if we can agree to that, and I said, boy, hands down, count us in.
Yeah.
But for them to step up and they said, we're going to get this covered. We're going to make sure you're covered.
Wow.
And
is that how many events? 60
we have
games?
Last year we had 6,600 games. Now what we'll try to do is where we can, like let's just use T-ball. We use the football fields at the middle schools to play T-ball. We play in the corners.
Yeah.
So we can have 2 games at once. We can have 1 officer.
Right, yeah.
So that pares down a certain number of games.
They should be able to handle a T-ball crowd.
In a gym where we've got 2 gyms side by side and you're just walking by the doors, you can do 1 officer.
Yeah.
But if we're playing, like this year we'll have spring volleyball in gyms and we'll be playing flag football outside, that's 2 separate officers. And so – but like Roll Call, this company that we worked with, here's the things that they'll do for us. This was my biggest nightmare in our head, mine and Kiva's for sure, was payroll. Putting vendors in the accounting system, all the different officers and all the information that you got to go in and put in for vendor files and all that. We don't have to do any of that.
Wow.
Roll Call does that.
That's awesome.
So we agreed, and we want to get them paid as soon as possible. So we agreed to weekly payments for our security officers. We're going to pay on Tuesdays, but Roll Call handles all the W-9s, all the 1099s. They provide an insurance policy for the officer, for us, and an umbrella that covers the whole thing.
My gosh.
Should something get out of the way. So the way this has been done, and for the fee that we're having to pay, I couldn't be more pleased.
Yeah.
Because there's folks out there that don't understand all the liability involved with youth sports.
Yeah. Insurance alone, they don't understand.
Oh, you're on our board. Our commercial insurance is astronomical.
It is ridiculously
and so,
large,
it's 10%,
Jimmy,
15%
real quick,
of our budget.
and the consequences of the actions of these people, let's make sure people know what went down.
Well, from us right now, they're trespassed from anything that we do. They can't come on our property. They can't come to an event. Same for Emerald ISD, and I'm not going to speak to the depths of what their role, their limitations are there. They got to be able to get their kids to school if they got kids in school. But beyond that, they're pretty well exiled. It's still under investigation. There's still an investigation going. It could be presented to a prosecutor, and there could be some charges and some fines involved still yet to come. I don't know where they are with that. That's out of my jurisdiction, and no pun intended there, but that's out of my scope of work. But I've talked to prosecutors. I've talked to the police departments, and I don't know where they are with that. But this was something that we had to deal with. We had to face it head on, and we've done that, and we're moving on.
I think the public appreciates your honesty, but also your move to action.
Yeah.
We're having 17 meetings. We're figuring this and this. No, this is what happened. This is the action we're taking, and we're doing it right now with spring sports. And I think that the public just respects what Kids Inc. is trying to do, and that's just meet it head on.
Well, and this is kind of touching on the subject again, that I'm really ready to put to bed. And I'll be honest with you. I had a assistant news director at one of the news stations wanting to do another interview the other day, and tried to get our schedules. Our schedules didn't match up a couple different days in a row, and I finally just sent him an email and I said, I'm really ready to put this to bed. I'm really ready to move on. And part of the reason I is because at that press conference that we had for Sherry for the Morrison gift, I'm doing some interviews at the end, and one of the reporters wanted to know if I would talk about this issue. And I really wasn't in the mood to do so. I didn't think that was the time and place. But I finally they were all standing there. I said, I'll tell you what, you don't report on this today, but if you need to report on this subject one last time, I'll give you an interview. And all the news stations were there, and a couple of them chose to stay in the back and not be a part of that part of my response. And so I felt like I gave them an opportunity to do that then. I don't feel like I have to do that any further. I'm always very amenable to the media. But by the end of Thursday the other day, I was just done. I let this individual know there's no disrespect. It's time for us to move on. This is our podcast, and I don't mind talking about this. This is our medium.
Yeah.
And I can talk about Kids Inc. stuff anytime I want here, but I was ready to put that one to bed. And but and then that next day I had that meeting with the roll call and the law enforcement agencies, and it couldn't have gone better. And to know how much easier it's going to be for us than what we thought up front. and what we're having to pay for, it's money well spent, in my opinion. I hate that we had to raise fees to get there, but we're there. We're
Hopefully
move,
that trend,
and
that
we'll
number
move,
will continue.
and we'll move on. And so
Yeah.
hopefully we don't have to raise fees for another 6 or 7 years. And
Yeah,
that's where we'll
that'd
go.
be spectacular. The thing is, everybody wants to feel safe.
Sure.
Everybody wants to feel wanted, and everybody wants to feel safe in this world.
Yep.
And you're making a lot of people in Emerald.
Yeah, well,
feel
we have a
safe.
due diligence as an organization.
Yeah.
You as a board member and me as an employee to do the best we can there, and I think we've done just that.
And then we as hosts are going to say goodbye right now. So
Yeah, I'm in.
You are a host. Remember that, okay? Hey, thanks for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you want us to interview anybody at all, let us know. Stop us on the street, email us, whatever. You can find us. We're both out and about, but we would love to hear from you on that.
Shout out to Todd Agee. I ran into him at Feldman's parking lot the other night. He said he listens to every one of our podcasts. So
Todd Agee.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So, hey, this was the Fieldhouse Podcast. Just a reminder, it is a production of the Kids Inc. Sports Network. And like I like to say, we'll see you when we see you.